Welcome back to Life's Chillent. My name is Avital, and this week's Parshat is Parshat Pekudei, which is the very last Torah portion in the book of Shemot, which means that next week we'll be moving on to the book of Vayikra. And in Parshat Pekudei, it's a little bit of a wrap-up of what we spent the last several Parshas talking about, which is the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the temporary dwelling that the Jews would use to serve God during their 40 years in the desert. And the Parsha goes over, again, the garments that the Kohanim would wear in their service, because now these garments have been created, and the Torah tells us, all these garments the Kohanim would wear, that they were created and ready for use. And the Mishkan is complete, its construction is done, and Moses inspects it, and he fills it with all of the items, and then it's finally ready for service, it's finally ready for use. And the Torah tells us that God's presence comes in and it fills up the Mishkan, and God rests on the Mishkan. His presence, it becomes the dwelling place for God's glory on earth. Amazing. It's really quite incredible. And so the Torah tells us that God's presence filled the Mishkan, and it was represented by a cloud. So when a cloud was over the Mishkan, that meant that God was resting, his presence was filling the space. And I want to read you the verses related to that specific segment, to that specific portion, because it's the way the book of Shemot ends, and I really think that there's a lot of meaning that we can gain from the way it talks about God's glory and his presence resting on the Mishkan. So here we go. The verses say, "When the cloud was raised up from the tabernacle, the children of Israel would embark on all their journeys. If the cloud did not rise up, they would not embark until the day it rose up. For the cloud of Hashem would be on the tabernacle by day, and fire would be on it by night." So essentially what it was God's presence during the day was represented by this cloud of glory. And you would see the cloud resting on top of the Mishkan. And at night, that cloud would be replaced by a pillar of fire. And if God's presence was resting on the Mishkan, the people stayed still. They did not travel. Sometimes that would be for days, sometimes it would be for weeks. The period of time was always changing. But as long as God's presence was resting there, the children of Israel, they stayed put. And when the cloud or the pillar of fire would be lifted, they would journey. They would go on their way and continue towards the land of Canaan. And it brought up a lot of ideas to me, this idea of the light and the darkness. Jewish people, we believe in this idea that I've actually been talking a lot about with some friends recently, B'Tselem Elohim, being created in the image of God. And we also believe in the idea of being a light unto the nations. And God, here in this story, was giving the Jewish people light during their times of darkness. At night, when so many people have this fear of the darkness, the fear of the unknown, not being able to see what's out there, what threats might be on the way, God gave the Jewish people this pillar of fire that guided them, that led them in the way they were supposed to go with his safety and his protection. He gave them this light in the darkness. And Jewish people are supposed to be this light unto the nations. And we are supposed to be created in the image of God. And I felt like there's such a connection between these ideas of God providing us with light, us being made in the image of God, and us having this idea that we are supposed to give light unto the nations. We're supposed to be, the Jewish people are supposed to be the ones who are sharing light with others, bringing joy to them, helping them in their times of darkness. And God, similarly, was guiding the Jewish people. They would know when to travel or when not to travel based solely on the presence of his cloud or lack thereof. And God is continuing to guide us in those times of light and in those times of darkness. He's being there for us, providing us with light and with guidance. And if we're supposed to be godlike, if we're supposed to emulate these character traits of God, then how can we provide light and guidance to others during their times of darkness as well? Whether that's on a global level in times of war, whether that is, on community levels in times of tragedy, whether that is on personal relationship levels when someone is struggling, when they're having a difficult day, when they're going through something dark in their lives, how can we bring them light and how can we bring them guidance to help them through these difficult times? I think it's situational dependent. I don't think that there is one specific formula for how we can do that. But I do think it's important to just keep that in mind, that we are, as Jews, supposed to bring light and guidance to other people. This year, Parshat Pekudei also falls during the month of Adar. Adar is the Hebrew month in which the holiday of Purim falls out. And it's a month in which we're told that we're supposed to increase in happiness each and every day. Each day of the month, we're supposed to be getting happier and happier and happier. It's the time of year for joy. And I don't think that's a coincidence either that lines up so well with this Parsha about bringing light to people and bringing them joy and increasing in our happiness. And I thought of some really simple and easy ways in which we can bring others happiness. The first one might seem so obvious, but it's to smile. Smiling is super contagious. You smile at someone, and they're going to kind of want to smile back at you. They're going to want to mirror what you are giving them. So if you can give somebody a smile, a genuine smile, not like a faking it smile, but like actually smile at someone, actually bring them that warmth from your soul, and they're going to feel it too, and it's going to bring them a little bit of joy and a little bit of happiness. Obviously, if we can make somebody laugh, in whatever way that happens to be, whether it's by stating the ridiculousness of a situation or bringing humor and joy to something, that is a wonderful thing to do. I think also, at least on this side of the equator, it is the springtime. It's starting to be the springtime. Getting people outside. If somebody's having a really tough time, go for a little walk. Get around the neighborhood. Bring them outside. Just get some sunshine. Sunshine is so important and really brings that sun and that brightness in the most literal sense to people. Do a little bit extra to bring people joy during these times, and it will go so far. They don't have to be huge grand gestures. They can be those things simple as smiling at someone, giving someone a hug, letting somebody know that you're there to listen to them when they need an ear and a place to go. And being able to provide that counsel and being in the space just to be open to people who may be struggling during this time of joy to reach the pinnacle of joy. So I hope we can all learn from this week's Parsha, from Pekudei, the value of light and of bringing joy to other people. Wish you all a wonderful week and a Shabbat Shalom, and I look forward to speaking with you next time.